Here we go.
Hi everyone, just so you know, this session will be recorded and we are off. My name is Magda Piper and I'm together with Tuan Dean, who will be joining us momentarily. We are the coordinators for CTE, Center of Teaching Excellence. And thank you so much for meeting us today at this wonderful workshop with a great person who is joining us from Hawaii. So Lauren Dugas, that's how we say it, Dugas. She lived and worked in a public education system throughout her whole life. She's a currently curriculum coordinator for the Hawaii State Department of Education. So jealous right now. Where she specializes in integrating students' voice and building community across the classrooms. Her workshop today will be focusing on the community and building community across the classrooms, and it goes in line with this semester theme for the CTE as well as our adjunct the faculty workshop, which is the building the community of belonging. Lauren has worked extensively with students and teachers from elementary to secondary grades to integrate students' voices and build a strong sense of belonging in a classroom. Her work includes creating innovative and responsive instructional designs that provide students with supported educational system. Her work enables positive outcomes and sense of belonging while reducing educational gaps for all students, learners. She holds a BA in elementary education from Concordia University and MED in curriculum and instruction from Concordia. And she right now, together, we learned that we are doing this program together. We are working on our PhD in educational leadership at the Concordia in Chicago. And as I mentioned, she lives in Hawaii. I'm already jealous, triple jealous. So aloha.
Aloha. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have to say, like, I don't even know if you really need to have this conversation. Like, I feel like such a sense of belonging already. You were greeting everybody, you knew everybody's name. That was fantastic. So thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, like Magda said, I am I live on the island of Maui. I suppose you can be jealous, but I will give the little caveat that I am currently working to open a brand new high school. And if any of you have been part of opening a new high school, or just a new school in general, I bow down to you because it has been such a learning experience. And as we've embarked on getting this whole new school off the ground, building that culture and sense of belonging has been really at the forefront of what we're trying to do. And it is not easy work. So even though a lot of what will be shared today might seem like just kind of that should be a duh factor, or we already know this information, it's not easy. It's really great in theory, but actually putting it into practice sometimes takes a lot of work and effort and a lot of commitment from everyone involved. So it's been quite a journey. I really got into this work initially because I did a lot with student voice. We wanted to start bringing student voice to the forefront for students in that K-12 continuum. And that also is not easy. There's a lot of work that has to be done around building skills and helping them to really understand what using their voice is. So hopefully as more K-12 schools begin that work and start to strengthen that sense of self and sense of student voice, when they reach college and university level, they're coming with that already equipped and are ready to engage and participate in the way that you would like them to. So I really appreciate you all having me here today. It's bright and early for me, so I'm going to try and make sure we get through this in time for you to enjoy your afternoon. So as far as housekeeping is concerned, I did build in a little bit of question and answer time at the end. However, if something just really strikes you, please feel free to jump in, ask a question, unmute yourself, throw it in the chat, whichever your comfort level is, because it is much more fun when it's very collaborative and we can kind of work through things together. All right. Perfect. So, our day today, we're kind of just really going to look at what really is a sense of belonging and what contributes to that. Not only do we need to know what builds that sense of belonging, but what are some of those barriers that might prevent us from really effectively building student belonging? I'm going to give you a couple of strategies for building a little bit of belonging. Admittedly, I have worked more extensively with K-12, so I've tried to retool some of them to make sure that they're effective for college level, but we'll see how that goes. And then we're going to also celebrate what you're already doing well, because I know there's a lot of great practices that are already taking place, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge the fact that the work is already being done. So we've divided this up today into kind of four big components. Why is belonging important? Why do we need to establish this for our students? Apologies, the text of that. There we go. Um, why is it important to establish this with our learning community? In particular, why is this important for our college students? How do we do it? How do we start building these strategies on our campus? And then we'll close out with some just clarifications, conversations, and any other questions that you might have. Sound good? Right. So to get us started today, I like to kind of understand the learning community that we're already operating in. So we're going to do just a couple of quick little introductory activities. Because this is a virtual platform, I like to use what's called waterfall chats. So we will be utilizing the chat feature. You're going to type when I give you your prompt, you're going to type your response into the chat, but you do not push send right away. You got to hold on to it. And I know that that goes against everyone's nature. You just want to go and send. But you're not going to push send quite yet. As you're waiting for me to give you the prompts to push send, you can reread your response, make any edits. And when I say waterfall, you can push send and you're going to see just a waterfall of responses come up in the chat box. So you can just scroll through as people are putting their response in right there, read what they've written, kind of consider what resonates with you. And if you can, just type a quick response to someone, just tagging them just to make sure that you can make some connections really quickly. So again, I'm just going to run through these. Just make sure that you do not press send once you get a prompt. You're going to wait until I say waterfall, and then we'll watch our waterfall responses. All right, so just a basic introduction, just your name, your department or content or whatever your role might be, and your number of years working in education. So name, role, and number of years. And we are going to waterfall. That was a very impressive restraint, by the way. I've never had it where someone didn't go pull the trigger too fast on that first one. So well done to all of you. Cool. Got a nice range. Awesome. Thank you, Claudia, for responding to a friend. I appreciate that. All right. All right, we're gonna do it's true, David, thank you. But don't worry, I've got another prompt for you. All right, so our next waterfall chat will be just to kind of rate your comfort coming in right now with building a culture of belonging in your class. And we're going to run this on a scale of 1 to 5, from like not at all comfortable, I don't even know what we're talking about, to completely comfortable. I've been doing this for a long time and I'm a pro at this. So 1 to 5, what would be your rating? All right, and we're going to waterfall. Okay. All right, George, we can let George step up and you can do this. That's totally fine. I love it. I love that everyone is comfortable with this. Perfect. That means half the battle's already won. All right. In our waterfall chats again, don't share it quite yet until I say waterfall. Share one strategy that you have tried to successfully support a sense of belonging within your classrooms. Um, there may have been failures, but right now we're going to focus on something that you have successfully implemented in your class. So hold on to that strategy until I say waterfall. And waterfall. Lots of knowing students' names. Beautiful. Using our pronouns. Checking in. Awesome. Non-judgment zone. Thank you, ma'am. And feel free as you're reading through those to share or comment to a friend. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you all sharing that. Like said, knowing kind of what community we're operating in and what you're bringing to the conversation. So thank you. I do want to just kind of start with this one quote that really kind of speaks to how important this is, and that's that a sense of belonging is just a basic human need. Without it, we know that our students' motivation, engagement, and performance are likely to suffer. We can bring Maslow into this. This basically falls at that very base level of what our students need in order to be successful. If they don't have that belonging, which equates to safety in a lot of their cases, they're not going to be participating and meeting the expectations that you might have in your classroom. So it is just important that we acknowledge that them as humans before we acknowledge them as students. All right. So why is it so important for us to begin establishing belonging within our learning community? I will admit that I have a lot of wordy slides, and I will be sharing the slide deck with you. So don't get too bogged down in all of the words. I'll share it with you just as a reference point later on, if that would be helpful. But kind of this definition that I'm kind of operating under is adapted from the Qualia Institute for Student Voice and Aspirations. And they look at belonging as being a valued member of the community, but still maintaining your uniqueness. We're not trying to turn students into what we're expecting. We're expecting to embrace them and meet them where they are. So it's manifested also in relationships between multiple people and characterized by a sense of connection and support. If they're coming to campus every day and only have that one person that they're going to, that's going to give them a level of comfort, but it's not going to give them a sense of belonging. They're not going to feel like they contribute to a community as a whole. It's a really important condition to have an overall sense of well-being, social engagement, competence, and collegial working environment. Uh, these are skills that they're going to need just as much in the classroom as they are in their everyday life. So this is us really helping to build people up and empower them to be strong individuals. It can also enhance their intrinsic motivation, and it fosters self-confidence and an investment in the community. So that's a pretty hefty definition. It's not just a very quick and easy way that we can look at it. So I want you to kind of just take a look at it for a minute and think about which words or ideas really resonate with you. What's popping out in that definition that makes you connect with what belonging might actually be. And you don't need to put it in the group chat. We've got a different way to assess it, but I want you to just take a minute and kind of think about this one. And just out of curiosity, is there super loud computer noises coming through on the mic right now? I'll take that as a good. All right. All right. So I've gone ahead and thrown up our polling everywhere. You can either go to the link, which I will drop in the chat box for you, or you can just scan that QR code up in the top corner. And through this platform, you're going to share what are the words that really resonated with you from this definition. If it asks you to sign in, you can go ahead and hit the skip for now so you don't have to create an account. Right. Any of you that are familiar with the word cloud know that those words that have been used more frequently get a little bit bigger. So it looks like feeling really resonating with a lot of people, valued, togetherness, that uniqueness and support. Perfect. All right. So just to kind of get into the nitty gritty of kind of some of the data behind why belonging is so important. Um, it goes without saying that really belonging really is going to affect the retention and graduation rates of our students. Students with that strong sense of belonging are 4.6 times more likely to persist from their first to their second year of college than those who came in that initial year and just didn't feel that sense of belonging or that they were where they were supposed to be. And then that continues in their graduation rate, and it indicates that students who feel a sense of belonging on campus are 23% more likely to graduate within 6 years than those who do not feel a sense of belonging. Um, so I think that's it's astounding to kind of see the number and really understand what that means for our students. I think that we realize that if they don't feel like they belong, they're not going to continue, but really understanding how that's going to impact their future is a really important aspect of this conversation. It also contributes pretty directly to their mental health and well-being. Those students who report a strong sense of belonging have reported to have 29% lower levels of depression and 18% lower levels of anxiety compared to students who felt excluded. So just even giving them that base level of wanting to come in and be willing and being happy and in the correct headspace is contributed through that campus community that we're building. It also directly relates to their academic success, of course, if we know that they're going to graduate, but if they are really feeling that sense of belonging and that academic achievement, they're going to have a higher GPA as well. So I don't remember the exact number, but I know that students who with a high sense of belonging have I want to say probably a 0.5% higher GPA than those who didn't feel a really strong sense of belonging. And with that belonging really is tied into what a student's identity is. And a student identity is very complex. They have their social identity, which contributes to their peer relationships. They have their cultural identity and how they're represented, academic identity, which contributes a lot to their self-efficacy. And they kind of have to navigate how all of these different identities come together, particularly in a college setting. So when we're looking at their social identity, we're thinking about like their race and gender, sexual orientation, SES status, things like that. They're not going to form those meaningful relationships with peers unless they really understand their own social identity and they're finding people that can accept them within that identity. Students that have those strong peer relationships that affirm their social identity are 2.5 times more likely to report a high sense of belonging on campus. This research is specific to how they're feeling on campus, but again, this contributes to how they're feeling in their life as well. So when they leave your campus, how are they equipped to conduct themselves and really get into their identity outside of the academic environment as well? And what they're bringing a lot to the table is their cultural identity, which influences their sense of belonging in the sense that they often need to see their own identity in the content and the teaching methods just to feel validated and included. If we're using kind of just that teaching to the middle and the expected curriculum or having conversations that don't acknowledge a lot of different perspectives, they're also going to feel like their identity is not represented and going to withdraw from that sense of community in the classroom as well. It becomes a lot more compliance based than really engaging in the education. So a study by Lansing and Billings found that students with diverse cultural backgrounds are more engaged and report higher levels of belonging when that curriculum is actually inclusive of their experience. And their engagement actually increases by 17% if they're seeing themselves represented in the content. Their own academic abilities and aspirations are also really deeply tied to their sense of belonging. Aspirations is a really big part of this because the reason that they are there is because they are tying this into their goals and their objectives for their life. So if they're failing within their courses or they're not feeling a sense of success on campus, that's going to tie directly to how they're feeling about their aspirations and their ability to succeed in life in general. Not to make that incredibly dramatic, but that's going to shift a lot of their goals if they don't find that they are really accepted and achieving at a level that they think that they can. Or if they don't have those around them encouraging them to be able to achieve further than what they may be performing at. Um, pretty not surprising statistic that students who perceive themselves as high achievers and receive affirmation from peers or faculty are 20% more likely to persist in challenging courses. It is really good for our students to get feedback on how they're performing, but we'll discuss feedback a little bit more. But this is really tied into how they belong on their campus as well. And then how they're intersecting their identities. They're really uniquely shaped by how their cultural, social, and academic identities come together. So, for example, a first-generation student from a minority background may experience really unique challenges because they're trying to navigate this new academic expectation, and they may not have that support at home to help them guide through it. So they're really trying to bring pieces together, and that's part of our responsibility to make sure that they're understanding how to navigate all of those dynamics to be successful. So first generation students, especially from underrepresented groups, report a 37% lower sense of belonging than continuing generation peers. So it is, again, really important that we know our students' background and understand what it is that they're bringing to the room with them every day. All right, so what does this mean for college students in particular? A lot of the data is from specifically for college students, but a lot of it is just in general, K-12 data as well, just making sure that we're helping students to understand what their place is in the educational environment. So I'm going to share this really brief video from the Association of College and University Education about what fostering a culture of belonging on a college campus looks like. And here. Oh, we're going to switch tabs really quick. And then hopefully
students don't just interact with one group. They are going from a residence hall to the cafeteria to their class.
And I just want to, can I get just a couple of on the chat? Can everyone hear that okay, or is it pretty quiet?
No, we can hear it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Classroom to the gym to the health center. They're interacting with all kinds of people in between and in those spaces.
It's not enough that a student comes to my office and feel welcome and safe. It has to.
My apologies that it just decided to undo.
It's not enough that a student comes to my office and feel welcome and safe. It has to be across the campus.
It's important for our students to really feel that there is a network and a community that is invested in them at their institution.
To feel like when they come here, they have got a community that's got their back.
And not feeling like they have to change themselves for the environment they're in college.
There's so much literature on a sense of belonging, especially for first gen, low SES students. When they don't feel like they belong, they're less likely to complete they're less likely to meet their academic and professional goals.
When we are teaching our students to solve these worldwide problems, we want them to be struggling with the problem itself and not thinking that they are the problem.
And if you can give them that first positive experience, then you have laid the foundation for the rest of their experience in higher ed.
When you have that sense of belonging, the feeling of warmth, openness, security, you want to do the best for the greater good.
Employee retention is just as important as student retention. You have to make everybody feel that they are wanted and valued and needed.
It's about valuing the individual for who they are and what they bring to the table every day.
Everybody needs to be treating students and each other as if we all belong here, because we absolutely do.
Knowing that there are people willing and ready to help you, it really makes me feel important and that I can do anything because I have a village surrounding me.
And I share that just because it's kind of a nice, really quick snapshot of just the importance um, of what that looks like on a college campus. The Association of College and University Educators has a lot of great resources. I've included that at the end of this if you wanted to dig into it a little bit more, but they've got some really great information about what this can look like on your campus. All right, and as they had in that video, that a sense of belonging is one of the most pivotal predictors of student and employee retention and success. And I draw attention to that in particular because we talk a lot about belonging because we're trying to build this sense for our students, but it's also crucial for faculty as well. It's really about the community as a whole, students and faculty, and everyone that has a role on that campus. Even if it's just a visitor on campus for the day, they should be able to feel that sense of belonging and welcomeness, and that it's just a positive culture of learning. And so a lot of the strategies that we'll talk about today are focused specifically on making sure that students are going to feel that sense of belonging. But just as many of them could easily be pivoted to use in faculty meetings, team meetings, things that might need to happen just to make sure that your faculty is coming together and building that sense as well. And so perhaps because every now and then we have to play the devil's advocate, you might be thinking these are adults. Why is this a priority? Shouldn't they already know how to navigate the dynamics of the educational environment? But a lot of students who are coming into the college setting, if they've come through that K-12 system, they've really experienced something that's more structured and monitored. They have people who are just actively working to create that sense of belonging around them. They're not as necessarily engaged in the process. It's just being kind of built around them a little bit more. There's just really consistent routines and support systems, and the social dynamics are very different. They have a lot of fewer responsibilities outside of their academic and social roles. So it's just a completely different experience that they're coming from as far as belonging. So I'm sure a lot of us, as we think back on our experiences in school, we probably felt a much stronger sense of belonging in elementary, probably middle school is a little wonky, high school, you kind of start to find your niche. But college becomes a completely different element when we're talking about belonging. Our students are coming in managing multiple responsibilities now. A lot of them, if they are freshly out of the secondary system, are experiencing some new autonomy. So they're navigating that independence and figuring out how they're going to take on their academic responsibilities and build that academic identity. And they're having to take that active role in their education. So they actually need to become a much more active participant in that building a sense of belonging, but they need that support from others around them. So it's not any one person's job. It's not going to just land on the faculty to really need to build this belonging. It doesn't just land on students to build it, but it becomes a very collaborative effort. All right. So before we kind of start talking about what some of the barriers might be, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in there. What do you believe might be some of the most common barriers from student that might prevent students from developing a really strong sense of belonging? Insecure, yeah. Socioeconomic factors. Oh, got some going into the chat. Indifference, imposter syndrome. Okay. Give you another minute to kind of get into that poll and maybe share a couple more ideas. Oh, there's more. Perfect. Distrust, scared, difficulty finding parking. Parking, yeah, honestly, if they can't find parking, they don't want to even begin the process. Anxiety about environments, thinking that everyone shares certain characteristics, seeing the same experiences. That's so true. Limited social skills, distrust. Yeah, a lot of baggage around previous school experiences for sure. Yep. Different peers and facilities. Yep. Marginalized groups. Beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. So a lot of you hit some of these big ones, but some of the most common barriers to our students really feeling a sense of belonging is going to relate to their socioeconomic status, cultural differences, any language barriers, or non-traditional student demographics. And while I personally don't necessarily know the specific demographics of your institution, I know that it's pretty common to see all of these in the majority of schools these days. So if we're looking at their SES, students from these backgrounds often face issues such as a lack of access to resource, difficulty affording housing or food, or working multiple jobs. So as we said earlier, they're bringing a lot of that excess stress and worry with them into the classroom often. The impact that it can have on belonging in school is that it'll impact on their engagement in activities, not only academic, but also social. If your campus is offering a lot of things for students to do, oftentimes they won't have the time. They've got to jet from class and be able to make it to a job, or they have other things that are pulling at their time. So they're not going to be able to just naturally engage in those social activities on campus. So they're going to avoid those extracurricular events. They may not have the time to go to study groups. If any of those social gatherings have cost, of course, then that might limit their participation. But it also extends to even conversations in the classroom. They might feel marginalized if conversations around luxuries. So if people are talking about vacations or where they're going this weekend or what new clothing or vehicles they've bought, things like that, it can just make them feel marginalized and withdraw from within the class conversations as well. So as you're kind of thinking about how conversations or how you might be structuring conversations in the room, just being aware of how the direction of that conversation can impact different students. Students from those minority and cultural non-dominant backgrounds, a lot of times our classrooms are centered around Eurocentric or Western perspectives. So it kind of minimizes their own cultural experiences and viewpoints. So as was mentioned earlier, if we're just kind of teaching to the middle and we're not necessarily looking at other perspectives, students might feel underseen or undervalued. If they're not seeing themselves somehow and connecting with what's being taught, they're not necessarily going to feel that willingness to come into the classroom on a daily basis. It really might cause them to disconnect. Being one of few people from a specific cultural group can lead to feelings of isolation. Oftentimes those students will find each other on campus in a way, but they're not necessarily in the same courses and they're not necessarily seeing each other on a regular basis. So rather than having them gravitate towards one another and just kind of stick together and feel like they're their own little unit moving through the school, we need to make sure that we're finding ways for them to be involved and celebrate their cultural identity within our classes. And of course, language barriers. Proficiency is always a significant hurdle if if English is their second language. I could just tell you from working in different high schools, we do have a lot of students who come to the US for education later on and have absolutely no experience with English. And so you're seeing that in the colleges, that they're getting very limited proficiency by the time they leave the high schools. So participating in conversations can be difficult, interacting with their peers or with you can be difficult. They have that fear of making mistakes. And so creating an environment in which they can feel comfortable to make those mistakes and kind of work through it is just vital to making sure that they want to participate. Obviously, a lot of these courses are using very complex terminology. You've got a lot of academic vocabulary that they're going to need to use. So that does make it a struggle. And we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to support and find those ways to help students navigate those concerns, but feel comfortable to come to you or to work with peers to make sure that they're successful. If they don't feel that sense, then it definitely leads to social withdrawal, limited participation in those collaborative learning opportunities. And so it's definitely going to impact both their academic performance and their sense of belonging. And first generation students, as we mentioned earlier, they often lack guidance navigating those academic and institutional systems. So without that support from home or that knowledge already, it can be really intimidating and challenging. And that's where a lot of the faculty comes in to helping support students and making sure that they don't feel that isolation on the process. Especially with their peers who have that support and already are familiar with the process or are just overall very successful with navigating all the experiences. They may not feel like they can participate in things and are likely to withdraw from academic and social engagement. And then those working adult students, especially those who have families or other major responsibilities, they often have a lot of limited time to engage in campus life. So if we're just kind of sitting in our classrooms, just relying on the campus activities to be the part of school that our students connect with and feel that sense of belonging, we have to realize that a lot of students are not actually participating in those. They have schedules that take them off campus immediately, and they won't necessarily feel that traditional college experience. So because they're not able to, we need to make sure that we're fully immersing them in the academic, but also giving them opportunities to connect with peers within the classroom, so that they're not feeling isolated and that it's just I go to the classroom, I go home, I go here, and it just becomes a very rote, not engaging process, but something they just have to do on a day-to-day basis to achieve whatever their goal is. And finally, of course, their race and ethnicity might be a factor in preventing them from feeling a real strong sense of culture on campus. Things like subtle forms of discrimination and microaggression can really impact in a way that, obviously, if it's microaggression, we're not seeing it as heavily, but those are the things that can really impact and lead our students to not be successful. They often feel a lack of validation. They're not seeing themselves reflected in either the faculty, students around them, or the curriculum, and that causes them to withdraw. So the cumulative effect of these experiences really kind of pull apart their sense of belonging and all of their academic confidence. And finally, our students' gender and sexual orientation also can really contribute to this. They may face discrimination or marginalization if there's really a lack of awareness. I feel like this is an issue that's becoming a lot less prominent, but it's still there, and a lot of students are hyper aware of how that identity is perceived, particularly if they are if they're just coming out of the high school experience. They may not have been in an environment where it was particularly acknowledged and or accepted, and so this is their first experience to really start embracing that part of themselves and finding that part of their identity within the classroom. So rather than having them feel like they need to downplay or hide their identity, we need to really celebrate those opportunities where they can fully engage and contribute to the learning community. So the role of the faculty comes in a lot of different ways, but three of the kind of big ideas are really around that intentionality, cultural competency, and in feedback and validation. So when you're designing courses or thinking about your interactions with students, you really need to be purposeful in how those courses are structured, and how students are, how you're interacting with students. Providing course materials that reflect really diverse perspectives and voices, finding ways for students to be able to bring elements of their own culture into that classroom to feel represented and included is important. Finding those examples from scholars of different races and cultures, and bringing those to the forefront. And And of course, this is going to come up a lot, and it's something that I think most know, but just knowing their name and knowing how to pronounce it. I have a friend who worked for a very long time for San Francisco USD, and said that that was one of the hardest things was just learning all the pronunciation. And he learned a lot more about pronouncing things in Mandarin than he ever thought because there were so many students that had Chinese names. And so he said it was really important to them that he be able to pronounce it correctly, and it took a lot of work and effort, but it was so worth it just from even being able to pronounce it. Showing interest in their experiences and engaging with them on a personal level are also going to help you understand who they are. Obviously, they're not going to walk in the door and you're going to understand every single thing that they're bringing to the table. So you're going to have to put in that effort to make sure that you really understand them so that you can engage with them on a personal level. And all of those small things really can help them feel that sense of belonging in the classroom. Felton and Lambert let us know that instructors who are intentional in designing inclusive learning environments really send a powerful message to students that their identities matter and that their experiences are valued. And you know, this is really where it becomes something where everyone has to really be all in on this. It can't be that there's those three teachers who are doing a really great job with this, and those kids all feel comfortable going to their class, or they know that they're welcome there, and the rest is just kind of your average, we're in, we're learning, we're out sort of a situation. It needs to be that everyone comes together to build this. Otherwise, it becomes isolated and it's not really a culture of belonging, it's a pocket of belonging. So just like we mentioned earlier, that cultural competency, you really do need to understand that, demonstrate that understanding of their diverse backgrounds. So learning as much as you can about them. I know that that takes time and you do have a lot of content to get through, but finding those ways to really quickly get to know your students at the beginning of the course really helps you to create those more relevant and accessible learning experiences. Whether or not you do that through anonymous surveys where students can share that information and you don't necessarily know specifically who they are, just so that they have the opportunity to share that piece of themselves is good. That can help guide some of those classroom discussions and perhaps some of your content choices. It's also good to establish those norms within your classroom that promotes respect for all identities and viewpoints. A culturally responsive classroom really affirms that diverse student experience and encourages them to participate. Cultural competency isn't really about knowing everything. No one's expecting you to walk through the door and actually know everything and be able to address every single need of students. But it is about a commitment to continual learning and a recognition that students' identities matter in their educational experience. Feedback and validation. A lot of this not only is about feedback and validation, but just relates to clear communication with our students. So providing that timely and constructive feedback really helps to reinforce their sense of belonging and their academic self-efficacy. And the stronger their academic self-efficacy, the more of a sense of belonging they're going to have. Feedback is really about more than just assessing performance. It's also about showing that their work and process and progress are valued. It can really help them make connections to the academic material, making sure that you are making those clear connections for them. Avoid only pointing out mistakes, but really balance those constructive critiques with recognition of efforts. One of the things too that I think is really important for us to recognize about this too is that we need to understand how students want to be recognized. If we just use the same strategy with everyone, for example, public praise, if you not call out a student, but actually acknowledge a student in front of the class, and that's incredibly uncomfortable for them. You might be doing something that you feel is positive and providing that feedback and validation of something they did good, but that may not be the way in which they appreciate it and could cause them to withdraw. So it's also important that we understand the way that they like to be acknowledged. Maybe they just want a quick email from you that says, hey, I noticed you were working really hard on this, and that was, you did some great work. I'm seeing a lot of positive growth. And that's just that little touch that they need that's going to give them that positive validation. If you are going to publicly affirm their contributions, make sure that you're making it clear that their voice also matters in the course, and use language that highlights how their input enhances the collective learning experience. When instructors provide constructive and timely feedback, students perceive it as a form of support and validation of their overall potential. All right, so we're going to do another quick little video about how we can build that community in college classrooms. Um, Let me make sure I share the quick screen. I say a student's name, like, hey, Ryan, how are you doing? And they'll look at me like, whoa, you knew my name? And it just gives this nice sort of moment where they're like, okay, she's recognizing me as a person in this room, not just a number on a page. I'm a lecturer in the biology department at Georgia Southern University. I've been here, I guess this is my 5th year now. I ask my students what they're interested in. The very first day of class, I say, what do you expect to learn in this class, or what do you hope to learn in this class? And then the next lecture, I build in at least one of those things, and I say, hey, you, John, you said you were interested in learning this. Let's talk about it today. And I try to make sure that I pull those things in.
I'm a non-traditional student coming in, and I have not been to school in 24 years. But Professor Sargent was like a breath of fresh air. I wish she was my teacher for the next semester, because she was just that patient. I've never seen anything like that. Never. I need her in my life. I need to put in my pocket.
She has changed my life in probably ways that she does not know. I was a nursing major when I first took her class, and just her level of enthusiasm and her authenticity was just so great that it inspired me to change my major to biology, and I'm so much happier. She cares about our feedback as students, and she will take that into consideration and change her lesson plans based on her students' needs.
The students can tell that she's wearing her heart on her sleeve, and that she really is there to help them improve their lives. With Top Hat specifically, she just increased her presence with that technology. I know that she made extensive use of the feedback that was available with these activities that she had on Top Hat. She has already become the leader in the department.
I'm able to establish that community within the classroom and say, like, I want you here. I want you to learn. I want to be a part of that process. And like, you bring yourself where you're at, where you are any given day, and just let's do it together. Right. So just very quick, very small example of just some of the little steps that we can take to really make sure that our students are feeling like they're part of it. You can see from the student testimonies within that little video, they definitely, it was making a really big impact on their lives, and it was just through being open and being willing to have those conversations and really getting to know her students. So it might seem like a little thing, but it has a really big value. Additionally, as you can see, one of the students referenced, I wish she could be my teacher again. That it can't be, it has to be everyone. Everyone has to commit to this, to building that community together. So that we're not saying, well, I only want them to be my teacher because they pay attention and they represent me and they make sure that I'm successful. But really making sure that it could be any given professor on that campus, and they can be comfortable going and being a part of that. All right, we're going to do another quick waterfall chat. Remember, do not press send on your answer until I've said waterfall. But if you could just drop in, share 1 or 2 words that describe how you're feeling about the content and what we've been talking about. It definitely is information you've probably heard, but it's just really good to open ourselves up to hearing it and reflecting back on what we've been doing for these pieces. So, so type in just 1 or 2 words, but don't hit send quite yet. All right, and go ahead and waterfall. Awesome, I love it. Good, all right. Glad that no one's too upset with it. It is very it is. I do like to acknowledge the fact that a lot of the trainings that I sit through as well, I come out of it thinking I probably could have taught that, or I probably could have gone over all of these bullet points. But a lot of times I also walk away from it thinking, okay, how have I gotten away from this? And what are the pieces that I haven't been doing as regularly as I might have committed to in the past? So it's always great to make sure that we're reflecting and coming back around to this. All right, so what are some of the ways that we can do this on our campus? I first just really want to highlight that student belonging is not a separate initiative. We're not talking about belonging in the sense that this is a standalone and I need to carve out time for my student belonging time on the side. It's really about making sure it's woven into every aspect of our teaching and learning community. So it does relate to your course design, to how you're interacting with students, how you're interacting with faculty, what are the institutional policies. It's really about the environment and making sure that students feel seen, valued, and heard at all times. So it's a lot of pieces. It's not just that one, if I greet my kids, students at the door, then automatically we're doing belonging and we're good. No, it's got to be represented in a lot of different areas. It's also important to acknowledge that it's not just about the professors or the faculty on campus that are required to head all of this. Students also have a very big role in making sure that this is successful on your campus. So you need to hold students to the standard that they're also going to use your name and their peers' names correctly. It goes a long way for the professor to do that, but it also helps for them to hold each other to that standard as well. Making sure that they are willing to respect and value those different opinions and point of views, and making sure that they're curious about those views, not just that they're willing to listen to them and acknowledge them, but also really be asking questions to deepen their understanding and strengthen their ability to understand different points of view. They need to be arriving in those classes prepared to participate and be willing to ask and answer questions. They don't need to pressure themselves to always have the right answer. Obviously, we're not going to expect that every time, but they still need to be willing to actively participate in that. They also need to be listening to their peers and recognize that they're part of a learning community, and demonstrate that willingness to engage beyond the content. So you might have conversations, of course, that pertain to the material, but what are we doing to foster conversations just on the human level and helping them to connect with their peers? They need to be willing to engage in that process just as much as you need to facilitate. So some of the big ideas for how we can start building that sense of belonging. After seeing some of the information about how your faculty has already acknowledged that you're doing this, a lot of these are things that you might have done at some point in the past, but it's just, again, reiterating how impactful these can be. So holding those check-ins in class, either just directly with students or via email, just to see how they're doing, can go a really long way. Even if it's just sending a quick email just halfway through the semester to ask students if they're sharing, if they have any challenges or what they're enjoying about the course, that little personal connection can go a really long way. It also means that if there are any issues or concerns that maybe they're not going to share with you or don't yet feel comfortable sharing with you, it gives them the platform to go ahead and share those concerns so that you can address issues early on. Holding those office hours and making them more accessible and approachable. It doesn't need to just be about coming to ask questions about the content. It can also be about having casual chats about their goals, what are their career interests or aspirations, what are some personal experiences they're having on campus, and also providing them multiple avenues in which to conduct those office hours. Maybe it is in person, maybe it's virtual, maybe it's just having that email thread going where you can regularly contact them. But just making sure that it's an available resource where they feel comfortable to access you outside of class time. It's also really important that we practice active listening. And I do think it's funny that I chose a picture where someone is not necessarily actively listening, but we can practice that active listening by giving full attention and acknowledging their concerns. So rather than just like hearing something and trying to move to a solution, such as I'm concerned about my score on this quiz. Okay, well, here's how you can retake it, or this is what you need to do to improve next time. Really getting into acknowledging their experience, understanding why that's a situation for them, and acknowledging that they came to you to talk about it. It really helps to validate their feelings and then foster that trust. Building up your inclusive course design. So really diversifying your syllabi and different instructional materials. So selecting readings from a range of authors and scholars, especially those from underrepresented groups. Highlighting contributions from various backgrounds can be a really important aspect to make students feel included. Even including something like a diverse voices section of your syllabus to feature specific readings, or giving them the opportunity to share their own resources that maybe they've found that pertains to the content that comes from different backgrounds that they feel might be valuable to discuss. But giving them that platform and making sure that it's apparent that you are willing to entertain a lot of perspectives and bring in new content to support what your educational goals are in your class. It's also important to contextualize the content. So you're going to frame those courses in a way that acknowledges diverse perspectives. And that can mean like how are we acknowledging how different cultures might interpret the material? It kind of goes back to, as I mentioned earlier, students from different cultures having very different reactions to things. So if you might be presenting something and someone from a different background are going to interpret it very differently. We found a lot of that with student voice. We have a lot of cultures where students sharing their ideas and opinions are very frowned upon. They are expected to hold on to those and defer to their elders. And so it takes a lot of work to help build students' capacity to want to share and feel comfortable sharing their ideas in an academic setting. And so it contributes the same way in contextualizing your content and making sure that you emphasize how certain content might be interpreted or might have affected different communities differently. We can also build a lot through peer collaboration. So using group work, which I have you cited as something that you do, it really does help to collaborate and help students learn from each other's backgrounds. It's important that you rotate those groups, including assigned groups or allowing self-selected groups so that they can work with a variety of peers, because that automatically helps them learn multiple perspectives. It's also important that you facilitate the establishment of clear roles to ensure balanced participation, because how many people don't want to be in a group project because they feel like they're going to carry the load. So at the college level, of course, we would hope that they would kind of naturally find those roles for themselves to make sure that it's balanced, but it might be incumbent upon you to make sure that you're facilitating that so that students are working well together. Using a peer mentoring system, whether it's in your class or just as an option available to them on campus, but it really helps them to foster connections, especially for your first year students or transfer students who aren't necessarily comfortable navigating the academic environment. You can set them up in study groups, offer advice for that so that peers can connect outside, or maybe establishing mentor-mentee pairs just for not necessarily content, but just navigating the campus in general. We also want to build that belonging through encouraging student voice. So obviously we want students to contribute their thoughts and questions in class. I think that in a lot of educational environments, we're moving away from the professor and or teacher holds all of the information and we are bestowing it upon the class, but it's really about co-constructing learning and knowledge together. So contributing their thoughts and questions and creating a culture where diverse perspectives are welcomed is really important. You might start with a question of the day to invite students to share how the topic that you're focusing on might connect to their experiences, or how their viewpoint might have shifted due to content, things like that. It's also really valuable to give students the opportunity to have input on class content. So helping them to shape elements of the course. So if you have an overarching theme, but you might be able to achieve that theme through various content topics, maybe letting students allow them drive that conversation. Similar to our video where she was commenting that students recommended certain things they wanted to learn about, and she would find ways to integrate that into the course content that day. It helps students to see that what they are wanting to learn is represented in the course as well. So whether that's on a daily basis or just at the beginning of the term, asking students to provide input on some topics they'd like to explore in depth, or suggesting alternate readings can really help them feel represented within the course. It also encourages them to establish a little more peer leadership. So helping students to lead conversations or present on topics of their own choice allows them to take ownership of the content as well. So rotating student-led presentations or giving people individual chances to take on active roles in guiding the class or being a facilitator helps them to feel a sense of self-efficacy and academic achievement. And part of the reason why we really focus on building up that sense of student voice is that we know that if students feel that sense of having a voice in their education, that they're 32% more likely to report having self-worth. They're 38% more likely to report having a sense of engagement, 43% more likely to report having purpose. And kind of, this is a very sobering one, but 78% more likely to report having teacher support. So that connection with the instructor and knowing that they feel supported really contributes to their ability to use their voice. The data from the Qualia Student Voice Institute, this survey has been administered to, I think they have, I want to say close to 1 million data points now that was administered between 2018 and 2023. So this is a pretty comprehensive look at how students are feeling when they have a voice in their education, and it can have a very strong impact. And they're not going to be able to participate and use their voice unless they feel they have that sense of belonging in the classroom already. When that full voice potential of their voice is realized, schools just look and feel different on the whole. So the cooperation is going to replace maybe the conflict that might be happening. Collaboration replaces any isolation, and confidence starts to replace the insecurity. So schools that really prioritize student voice have better attendance, they have more engaged students and teachers, and they have a greater self-worth and respect within the educational community. And it is definitely a shift in thinking in going from the traditional stand and deliver, I have the information, into being more collaborative and letting students facilitate with you. But it does contribute to a really positive environment and helps students really engage more strongly in the process. All right, I'm gonna breathe for just a second. We're gonna do a little reaction waterfall. Within the chat, if you can choose one of the emojis that describes how feasible you think some of those strategies might be for you to implement. I'm going to have you drop in an emoji and I'll tell you waterfall in just a minute, so don't press send. Find one emoji that really represents how you think you might be able to implement these strategies. And waterfall. Good, all right. I love the positivity. Perfect, all right. All right, so one other strategy that I kind of want to bring up, which it's becoming a little bit of a newer strategy. Perhaps you've heard of this already, but the idea of community circles. So I'm just going to show you a really quick 60-second video that kind of talks about what the community circle strategy is. I will admit that the best example I could find in video form is an elementary school, unfortunately, but this is something that's being conducted across all school environments right now. So we're just going to really quickly watch this, and then we'll talk about that community circle strategy.
There are a lot of kids who sometimes fall into the background. The kids who are always just calm and quiet don't always get the attention that the other kids get. One of the ways that I ensure every student's voice is heard in the classroom every day is by having an opening and closing circle. Meet me in your circle. We have circle agreements that have to do with respecting one another, listening to one another, being open to hearing what everyone has to say. Speak respectfully. What is your favorite thing to do with your family? I ask a question that has to do with family or life, and we have a talking piece that goes around. My favorite thing to do with my family is spend time with them. Every child has a moment in the day where all eyes are on them. Watch movies. It's a great way to build community. We get to learn things about each other that we wouldn't learn naturally just in the school setting. What I like to do with my family is going to mountains and stuff. I love that that's just a 60-second strategy there, just to kind of familiarize you with it. So for those who haven't heard of community circles before, community circles actually kind of came out of the restorative justice practices. So a lot of schools who started really prioritizing making sure that consequences and things within the school, conflict within the school was resolved in a more positive way, started using these community circles not only to build community within the classroom, but also as a restorative piece to help students or students and faculty members or faculty and faculty members resolve issues and concerns without it becoming the really big blow up event. It was giving them the opportunity and the platform to really acknowledge each other's perspectives and have a calm and collected conversation. So there's a lot of different ways that these community circles have been used. It's really just intended to help have a facilitated dialogue and give all participants a safe space to share their values and experiences. So there are actually a lot of colleges who have acknowledged that they've been using these community circles.
The University of Colorado has been facilitating circles just on community connection. They've used it on higher end issues like gun violence, Supreme Court rulings on affirmative action. They use these to have conversations on dealing with burnout or just setting expectations within a group, or just sharing their own personal values and thoughts. So they have a whole dedicated restorative justice team that works as a circle requester to help kind of generate some of these conversations that are occurring outside of the classroom. There's other schools that also use these and publish a lot about their works. Reed College, Loyola Marymount, and Loyola in Chicago, UC San Francisco, and others. So they've actually used this as more of a campus-wide thing to start being able to adjust or to address concerns or issues or help build community across the greater school. But these can also just be used in classrooms. I know that the video example was specific to really open-ended, kind of a little more happy, clappy, and feel-good things, and they are very beneficial for that. They're a great kind of icebreaker and conversation piece. But they can be used for content as well. It can be a very quick check-in, have everyone share one thing that was really resonated with them from the previous class period, or share one idea that they really feel like they may need some clarification around. And that gives them a safe platform to be able to address those issues academically or personally. And even though they may not in the circle necessarily have a conversation about how to address it, thank you. It's been shared, and so now anyone that's able to support them knows that that's an area in which they may need that extra support. So in these community circles, again, because there's a lot of different strategies around it, some of the big pieces that are always utilized is that you always begin with a check-in just to set the intention and ensure that everyone that's there is ready to participate and is all into this process. And they call them community circles because you are literally getting everyone into a circle. There's no one sitting at the front. There's no one that's in a seat of prominence. Everyone is on equal footing and is there to have a conversation together. There must always be those agreements about what the shared expectations are and your values for participation. You can think of them as the group norms. Just making sure that everyone is coming to the table with the same understanding about how we're going to conduct this conversation. And then where they're going to have that discussion. You're supposed to only use open-ended questions just so that it gives students the opportunity to delve in and really share a little bit more. It's not necessarily super effective if you're just asking a yes or no or a thumbs up, thumbs down sort of response. But if you have students where that's what they need, you can give them the opportunity to just give that thumbs up or thumbs down. Students, of course, always have the opportunity to pass. But the more these are utilized, the more students who are reluctant to engage start to open up and will begin to participate in sharing their opinion more confidently. And furthermore, these also are supposed to, we should also always agree to confidentiality within community circles. Anything shared within that circle stays within that circle. And so it's supposed to encourage students to be more confident in sharing and being comfortable. And they're not going to be able to reach that level until it's been pretty clear that everyone belongs together and has reached those agreements together. So that sense of belonging is really built through this, but also very vital to this. All right. A few just really quick other strategies that might be beneficial. These are kind of more of the duh factor, but starting with those community builders. So making sure that you just have really low stakes activities that really allow students to engage and share their personal stories. Using that student spotlight idea, taking a few minutes to highlight specific achievements or contributions. You can even do a class spotlight, starting class by highlighting what it is that that particular group of students has done together that really well is just a good way to set the tone for a class and make sure that everyone feels like they're a part of the process. And again, this goes back to making sure that you understand how students prefer to be acknowledged. Don't put a student on student spotlight blast if it's going to embarrass them to no end to be called out in the middle of class for something positive. Using reflective assignments, giving time for some reflective journaling or thinking where students can connect those content to their personal life. Taking just that little bit of time at the end just as kind of a, not necessarily a tie-up, but really helping them connect it to themselves gives them that motivation to continue on that educational journey in the content. Being really flexible in your assessment options, having multiple ways in which students can demonstrate their learning really is important, not only to necessarily their learning style, but also their cultural expression. If you just automatically assign students that they need to put together a podcast and they just do not feel comfortable, and it's not something that is comfortable for them within their culture to share via podcast, then you want to give them an alternate means of being able to demonstrate how they've learned the content and material. And encourage identity sharing through assignments and discussions. Let them bring in their perspectives related to that course content. Again, just like when you're building your design or setting up that syllabi, how are students going to have the ability to contribute to what it is that they're learning in the class, and what are their avenues? Just being really clear on the communication for how they can contribute that. All right, so we're going to do a really quick permission to envision activity. Like I said, this is obviously something that a lot of you have probably heard, but it might be that you're kind of coming back to it, or you're really wanting to strengthen this particular strategy. So I want you to kind of take a step back and envision what it is that you hope for your educational community in terms of student belonging. And as you think about that, you're going to write a headline that reflects your goals. Now, we're only going to share our headline with everybody, but as you're thinking about your headline, I want you to be considering what might your first step be into realizing that goal within your classroom or across your campus. So we're thinking about what is your goal for student belonging across your campus, and you're going to write a headline for that. And I'm going to get this dropped in. You're going to share your headline via the poll everywhere. So as you draft that, just drop it into our shared document there. Beautiful. Daily belonging. Fabulous. I love it. High school ninjas, nice. Nice. Inclusive spaces for learning. Beautiful. Home away from home. These are great headlines. I would read any of these stories. Let's do. Awesome. I love that. Doubling graduation rates. Beautiful. These are great headlines. Perfect. All right. Now I have to be very honest. I do not like talking. Talking for this long is actually very stressful. So I am not a fan. However, I would like to make sure that you have plenty of opportunity to get any questions answered. So you are welcome to either just unmute and ask a question, any questions that you might have, throw it in the chat box, whatever you like. We'll just address any of those that you might have, and then we'll close it out. I'm usually really good at wait time with high school students because they like to play forever. However, I also understand if you don't have any questions, not a problem at all. I will stay on for a couple of minutes afterwards as well if you just have something that you would like to ask directly and don't want to ask in front of everybody. As I mentioned earlier, I will be sharing all of the slide decks so that you have access to any of the resources, videos, things that you might like. I've linked in there some resources for more learning.
the Association of College and University Educators. That link goes directly to their fostering of student belonging section of their website. The Qualia Institute for Voice and Aspirations has just tons of resources around how to build up students' voices and what that looks like on a positive school campus. There's an article about 7 practices for building community and student belonging virtually. So if you are leading any virtual classes for any reason, that becomes a little bit of a different concern. So those are included there. And I also included a link to how the University of Colorado is implementing their community circles. The colleges that I mentioned earlier also have pages with information about the community circles as well. So they're a really great way to, really great way for you to look at that. Oh, perfect. All right. Perfect. Yeah. And you'll have access to that video. It's a really good one. Do any colleges or universities have a point person? I mean, I might be able to think of a couple that I could put you in contact with. Rachel, if you want to, I'm going to give you my contact info at the end. If you want to email me, I have a couple of different universities where I've worked with a few people that might be able to share how they've experienced a little bit about student belonging.
Thanks.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate all of your time today. Again, I know that was a lot of word heavy and probably things that you have heard, but I appreciate you bearing with me. And I hope that it kind of has sparked and reminded you of some of the great practices that you're already doing on your campus, because I know a lot of these you're already doing. But really being able to extend yourself and push it a little bit further is going to be so meaningful for your students. So should you have any further questions, my email address is included here. Feel free to reach out at any time. I'm more than happy to chat about anything that you might have questions about. Thank you all.
Lauren, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Magda. I appreciate that.
Yes, I really appreciate your time, and you still have a full day. We're closing our day.
That's very true.
If you want to add a couple of words.
On behalf of the CTE and Magda and I appreciate everyone for participating in today's workshop. Also, a great shout out to our presenter, Lauren, taking the time out to come virtually to speak to us about a sense of belonging. So thank you, everyone. Your name has been recorded in our sign-in sheets for the CTE. So yes, everything has been recorded and documented by Laura. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, and have a great day.